Good afternoon, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call the September the 20th, 2021 meeting of the Nash County Board of Commissioners to order. I apologize on behalf of the board for being just a few minutes late. We had some technical problems up here with our iPad, which has all the data we need today on it. Someone at the county, hadn't been able to find out who yet, wanted to change the working platform that we used here, because the other one didn't do right, quote unquote, but we'll get through it here shortly. It's getting better every month, and I appreciate your patience.
So much better.
It is customary for this board, first of all, before I say that, I will indicate that we do have one commissioner, Mr. Outlaw, that is attending the meeting on our Zoom platform or Teams platform today. He is presently quarantined due to COVID, and certainly wanted to participate in the meetings like we all do. We have excellent attendance on this board, but he'll be joining us on the Zoom meeting. And Stacy, can y'all signify that that is up and running and ready? It is?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I saw him up here earlier.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right, it is customary for this board to begin each of our meetings with a prayer by a sitting commissioner. During this time, you're welcome to stand and join us in the prayer. You're welcome to use this period of time to have your own prayer, or you're welcome to use it for a moment of silence, whichever you so desire to do. So we'll have Dan Combs do the invocation, and Wayne Outlaw will be doing the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, which is on my right. So at this time, Commissioner Combs.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for another beautiful day. Lord, we thank you for all the blessings of life that you provide for us each and every day, Lord. Forgive us when we sin against you and when we take you so much for granted in the things that you do for us every day that we don't realize and we don't give you the honor and the glory for, Lord. Lord, we just pray that you would be with us during this meeting, Lord. We just pray that everything we do and say would be pleasing in your sight, Lord, and that everything we do here today would be in the best interest of all the citizens of Nash County. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Commissioner Outlaw.
Chairman Davis, it appears as though we've lost him.
All right. Well, I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag then. You'll face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 4 is approval of the minutes from our earlier meeting this month, which is September the 7th. You have those in your packet or on your iPad. I would entertain a motion for approval, corrections, or addition to those at the proper time.
$500,000 last year for coal production.
Oh, Jesus.
I have a motion by Commissioner Combs. There a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leggett. Any questions on the
Live
motion?
now.
All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Commissioner Outlaw, are you with us now?
Yes, sir, I believe I am. I'm sorry for the issue.
Okay, quite all right. We're moving on to item number 4 at this time. Excuse me, item number 5. Item number 5 is a redistricting presentation. This is the first presentation that we have had with any actual data involved in it. And at this time, I'll call on Craig and Amanda, who we met last month with Brooks Pierce, to make the presentation. And welcome back, sir and ma'am.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
I had a bit with another commissioner. Y'all indicated that we were doing everything we could to be fair, and therefore we had.
Point of order, we don't have the picture showing.
What are we lacking?
We don't have.
The screen isn't lit, our screen.
We have.
He's just seeing this also, the presentation.
Our screens aren't on.
We need the presentation on our screen.
They're monitored.
My screen is on, but some of the rest of them are not.
Mine's on.
Is yours on?
Mine is on.
Mine's not on.
I assure the public, we're normally not quite this unorganized, and we're gonna get there.
You never had
Chairman Davis, while they're working on that, I have hard copies of what's up on the screen if you want me to hand that out to
Okay.
commissioners.
That would be fine. Thank you.
I'll do it for you.
As I was saying, I had a bet with another commissioner. In all fairness, the manager and our attorney picked a firm that told us they would have two attorneys working on it, one Democrat and one Republican. And another commissioner, I had a bet going which one was which. And so we're going to listen intensely today to find out what you got to say, but we're going to also try to solve that bet problem also, just for your information.
All right. Well, we'll try to keep it a mystery.
Try to keep it a mystery, okay? That would make it completely nonpartisan.
That's right. All right, so my proposed agenda for this part of the meeting is we first look at the data associated with the current map, which shows the populations under the existing districts as they stand today, and we believe establishes substantial inequality. We've passed around a draft resolution, which the board...
Speak a little louder so I can hear you.
Sure. We've passed around, so I'll start from the beginning. My proposal is we handle our time in two segments. The first of which is we discuss substantial inequality, which requires us to look at the data associated with the current map and determine that one or more districts are not within the bounds required by the Equal Protection Clause. In other words, they're either below 95% or above 105% of the ideal district. And you have those numbers in front of you. And we've also circulated a draft resolution to that effect that the board can adopt. Then the second phase, we'll be discussing the initial map put together by our demographer. And during that phase, I'll have some opening comments, but we have Peter Morrison, who is the lead demographer on our team, who is available, I believe, by Teams. I saw PM up on the screen, so I think he's linked and listening to us, and he will do a better job kind of walking you through the map and hearing, kind of presenting their thoughts in terms of drawing the map in light of the data that and the feedback we received during our initial meeting, but then also hearing questions and concerns that you have about the map or specific changes that you have in mind. And so I'm hopeful that'll be a fruitful discussion, and I'm certainly it'll be more satisfying than the last one because it'll be more concrete, whereas last time we were here, we were just discussing abstract concepts. Now we'll get to put those concepts into play. So looking at the screen, if you want to look at the first page of the handout I sent you, current plan 2020 population counts. So this is the census data applied to the current districts in Nash County. And as you can see, we've identified two districts that are outside of the range of reasonableness or the range of equality. And that is District 2, which is in red and is underpopulated, and then also District 5, which is in green, which is overpopulated. And as we discussed at the last meeting, there are two standards for determining substantial inequality. One is the 10% threshold, which is a more liberal standard or a looser standard. The other is the 5% threshold, which is adopted by the state courts and is a more strict standard and the one we recommend because it is more defensible. You have two districts that are outside of the 5% threshold, and so we believe that there is substantial evidence of substantial inequality. And if the board would pass a resolution as required by the general statutes, that would open us up to the process of redrawing the maps to solve for that issue.
Mr. Chairman, I may be confused here, but it looks like 3 and 6 are also beyond the 5% over.
Yep, 3 is too large. And 6 is as well. So I think we highlighted the two most extreme examples. And actually, when Mr. Morrison gets on the line, he presented this chart, and he might have an explanation for why we only highlighted the two. So As I said earlier, there's at least 2 examples. Now we have 4 examples of districts that are not within the 5% range. And so based on the evidence before the commission, there's certainly grounds to redraw the districts. One note I want to put before the board, before we get into the discussion, the reason the statistics are up front, both the population and the percentage counts, is misleading. In particular, the fact that we have the percentage of African Americans in the various districts, those were not a guiding or predominant factor in redrawing the districts, but naturally, as we redraw the districts, we have to be very conscious of the impacts on the various districts because we have to comply with the Voting Rights Act. And so those numbers are up front because they're concrete numbers that show you the results of what we've done. And so we took a look at the existing districts and the various populations, and being mindful of those percentages, we redrew the districts, focusing on various factors, and then show the resulting populations of the minorities in those counties to show that we're still in compliance with the VRA. And Mr. Morrison can go into greater detail about that. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I believe you have a resolution before you. It is, I believe, sufficient as a matter of law to qualify as what's necessary under Section 153A, subset 22, in terms of a finding of substantial inequality. If the board would wish to adopt that now or later in the proceeding, it's something that we need to do eventually. We can then move on to the map discussion phase.
If it's okay with you and legal, I'd like to do that after your presentation.
Sounds good.
I think we want to understand it better than what we do right now before we adopt that resolution.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Makes perfect sense. All right, so turning to, I guess, the second slide, the second page of the PDF that's on the screen. Let's go to the
That one? Oh, the second slide. Okay. I'll do it after that.
Thank you, Z. So this is, we'll just stop here briefly. These are the current districts. And the first chart on the first table on the first page is the populations of the respective districts under the 2020 census data. What you're more interested in is actually the third slide, and see if I could trouble you to scroll down to the third slide. This is an initial draft of new districts for Nash County. The things I want to highlight before I turn this over to Mr. Morrison, our demographer, are, the 2 key guideposts to redrawing maps are we need to accomplish substantial inequality. In other words, those districts that are either too small or too large need to be brought towards the average again. This accomplishes that. And in fact, if you look at the second table on the first page, it shows you the respective populations of the various districts. The second thing we need to be mindful of is the Voting Rights Act, the VRA. So we are obligated, as we redraw the districts, to not dilute the voting power of minorities in Nash County. And so what we've done is we've been mindful to maintain 3 districts, as they previously existed, 3 districts that retain majority populations of blacks to allow the county to remain its 3 districts that have minorities in the majority of the population. One thing that I believe Mr. Morrison will touch on is in reviewing the map, the demographers identified District 2, as it's currently drawn, having a very large percentage of black voters or black residents, 74.3% to be precise. There was some concern that if we retained District 2 as it currently standed, there could be suggestions that the district was packed. In other words, you chose this was not a result of the board, this is just the way the districts fell in light of the 2020 data, but if we were to leave it that way, there could be an allegation that District 2 had too high of a population of minorities. In other words, you were trying to move the black vote into one district rather than spread it out among other districts. And so one of the things the demographer tried to do is kind of rebalance that district to maintain a majority, but also move some of the African-American votes or the black voters into other districts so that it's not a possible, so that it avoids a possible allegation of packing that district. Again, that is not an allegation that comes at the board because the board did not draw that district with the 2020 data in mind. It's just the reality that based on the 2020 data, District 2 had a very high population of black residents. The last thing that the demographer did is they tried to draw this initial draft map, is they tried to align the districts with the existing precincts. If the commissioners will turn to, let's see, the third or the fourth, I believe it is the fifth page.
I can't make it move.
Yeah, you can't make it move. Is it frozen?
There you go. Somebody from, in the,
One more, please. All right, and this is a map, thank you. This is a map that shows the precincts, the current precincts of Nash County, highlighted in, I guess, kind of an electric teal color, and shows that against the redrawn map or the draft map we're showing to show that the attempt to align the districts as much as possible with the precincts, which are an easily identifiable community of interest that already exists in the county. And so I say this as to explain some of the thought process that the demographers used in trying to draft this initial map for the board's consideration. At this point, Peter Morrison, if you are on the line, I'd love to turn it over to you so that you can give an introduction to yourself and maybe further color on the map before we go into a discussion phase where we would love to hear the thoughts and comments and questions from the commissioners.
Craig, a couple of questions before you go there.
Sure.
If you don't mind. You're talking about District Number 2, and which has a significant change from what it was before. I heard you say the reason you may have concentrated on that district, but could you expand a little bit more on why it's important to do that? I mean, that's an existing district that we were comfortable with 10 years ago. And if you have no complaints, why the significant change as much as it is? It's changed about 20%. And I'm not sure that this board is going to be comfortable with that. But tell us why legally, if that's the case, why we would be asked to do that.
Yes, so it's based on, so there's two terms that are common in the lexicon of redistricting. One is packing and one is cracking. And it refers to past practices when governing bodies, when they would draw their maps, they would either pack all the minorities into a single district. In other words, they would make a really high percentage of blacks in one district rather than potentially giving them majority votes in two districts. In other words, they would pack them into one. And the other one would be cracking, where you would take the minorities population, if it was centered in a certain part of town, and you would crack it and break it into several different districts. So then rather than them having the ability to elect the representative of their choice, you kind of disperse them over multiple districts. There was no evidence that we could find of cracking. There was some concern based on the current population that there could be an allegation that District 2 could be subject to packing. In other words, the percentage of minorities in that district is so high, it's well above what's needed in order for blacks in that district to elect the representative of their choice, that there could be an allegation of packing. It's something that if the commissioners have strong reasons that they're, if you're opposed to that, for other reasons we can discuss, but as we looked at the map and the initial figures, that's something that's pretty commonly done when you're redrawing maps to try to avoid districts that have very large concentrations of minorities to avoid allegations of packing. And so that's the philosophy, that's the theory behind that adjustment. It's not set in stone. This is an initial draft, but that's one of the things we did in drawing this initial draft.
And are you looking at that district when you determine that could potentially be packing in the number of minorities in the existing, or the total population in the district, or are you looking at the county as a whole?
I'm sorry, could you restate the question?
Yeah, when, it was 74%.
Yes.
And are you looking at that district to see if there's an issue, the population in that district, or are you looking at it being high based on the county's total population?
It was focused specifically on the district. So just a high percentage of blacks in one district could invite an allegation of packing. In other words, intentionally moving blacks into that district. And again, that's not what the board did in drawing these maps. It's just the reality of the numbers based on the 2020 census data.
Okay.
How could you, would you call District 2 as it's constituted now? Packing?
I'm not, you know what, I don't know the history behind District 2, and I don't know what the population was back in 2010.
Well, you got the percentage here.
Well, so, Commissioner, these are percentages based on the 2020 census data. So in other words, we're looking at the district that was drawn 10 years ago.
No, but I'm
District
talking
2.
about 2010. It was drawn that it was 74% minority. And where you got it now is, it's down to 55.
What
So
you're saying, Fred, is that's not going to represent the population in that district.
that represents the population now. 55 minority and 45 other.
No, so, Commissioner, what we're doing is we have two numbers associated with District 2. The first is the 74%. That is, I believe you're from District 2, correct? All right?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Sorry. So currently, as your district is drawn today, under the 2020 census data, 75% of the people living in your district are black, right? What we did,
As it's drawn to.
As it's drawn
looking
today.
at the 2020, now it would still be 75%.
correct.
Mr. Chairman, I hate to interrupt, but in 2010, it might have only been 65%.
Yes.
The 74.3 represents the census based on 2020 applied to your 2010 district.
Well, in 2010, I remember it was 74%. Way the district was drawn, it was 74% minority.
Okay, and you know what, I don't know the reasons for drawing that district, and I'm not suggesting that it was packed. I'm saying, as we look at the numbers, it's an opportunity to make.
Where you got
Pardon?
over 20-some% of others in that district. I wouldn't call that packing. You pack them, like me, you're getting close to almost perfect, 100%, or at least way above 75%.
Yes, and,
I wouldn't call that where you got 30% other as packing.
so when we are drawing this map, we are being very mindful of taking a defensive stance and what's defensible and not going to invite litigation. 75% is a threshold that could raise questions of packing. And keep in mind that it's intended to be, it's a multiple factor test. Whether or not there's a violation of the VAR is a very complex test that looks not only at the statistics, but also the history of the county and multiple factors. And so as we redrew the map, we identified 75% as being a high number that could invite an allegation of packing, and so we took an opportunity to reduce that number, still maintain a majority of blacks in the county, and potentially eliminate a potential avenue for the county being sued. Now, that is not to suggest that back in 2010, it was packed. It's not to suggest that we wouldn't be able to defend a lawsuit to prove that it's not packed. It was simply as we put together this initial draft, we identified that number, and we saw as an opportunity, one of the things we considered as we redrew the districts. Now, if the board sounds like I'm hearing, at least from two members, that the board is very comfortable with District 2, that's something we were not aware of. We're not aware of your familiarity with the percentage there. And if that's something that we need to undo, we can. It was simply explaining one of the things we did as we first sat down with the map and started to.
And I do understand that. I think where we're going to end up is last time we had a similar meeting, and we had a different majority on the board, which honestly didn't come into play, and I don't expect it to come into play this time. But what we requested and got last time is they came back the second time with 4 scenarios, completely different. And then it was up to the board to decide which one of those 4 scenarios that we would prefer to have, which is why we got the districts we did. And, you know, your job, of course, and Amanda's job is to let us know what's wrong with this one, what's right with this one, and so forth. And then it's up to this board to decide, I think, how we want to move forward. So that's probably where we're going to end up at the end of this exercise, is giving us some choices. But the other thing that we're woefully lacking at this time, we can't look at the maps and tell anything about where the districts are, because they're just too small. We're going to want much larger maps to be able to do our real work on this thing, what numerous commissioners have already requested.
So a higher resolution map that allowed you to zoom in more?
Yes, sir, where we can see street names and things of that nature.
Okay.
But I do believe we're going to want to have multiple choices, maybe 4 different ones on different criteria. And I understand how you did these.
Yeah. And thank you for that. I'm more than happy to go about presenting with 4 different options and allowing the commissioners to choose. We were envisioning a more of an iterative process where we put together a draft, there's consensus, we make changes to a new draft, and we kind of move in a linear progression, presenting multiple options from which the board to choose from, and maybe modify one of those options is another way to go, and we're perfectly happy to do that.
Didn't we say the same thing?
No, I think we said 2 different things. So
Okay.
the thing we suggested is we start with one map, and we make changes based on that map. It sounds like you want us to come forward with 4 different options.
Well, I
Maybe
think
you'll-
we're a long way apart from what little bit I've heard from the board so far,
Mr. Chairman,
where we are, but I'm not that sure.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
well, I was going to make a comment.
Sure.
Well, you haven't heard that from me.
Have not had a discussion with you, Mr. Anderson.
Right. Well, anyway, as you say, packing, that I understand that, yes, that district need to be a lower amount of minorities, so that it looks like you might have borrowed, went into District 7, because District 7, now you have a higher number of minorities, and that's a district that basically kind of needs to be balanced so that that representation is more equitable as far as possibility of good representation there. So not getting ahead of you or whatever, but if that's the case, that I'm okay with the lower in District 2, not necessarily to that percentage, but so that District 7 could be higher as far as minority.
Yes, and that's the result of lowering the percentage in one district. It would increase the percentages in surrounding districts. And so, again, when we saw 74%, that is a high number. And so in the first draft, we made an attempt to lower the percentage of blacks in that district, which would result in surrounding districts having a slightly higher percentage.
I was looking at,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I was looking at District 6, and to me, that was a high percentage. This is my first time going through this rodeo, but I'm inclined to agree with Chairman Davis that I would like to see 4 different scenarios, and we as a board choose which one we think best suits those districts.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask one more question
Sir, you can ask all the questions you want, sir.
about the law? The question of packing, I know after the 80 census, we had the Salamander District in North Carolina, and that was clearly packing. But Section 5, it was approved under Section 5 initially,
Right.
but overturned in the courts.
Correct.
And that's because of packing.
Correct.
And so the law has evolved to the point where racial gerrymandering and packing is frowned upon by the appellate courts.
Yes, in general, yes.
Okay. So we've had a change in the law from what it was 40 years ago to what it is now because of court cases.
Correct, that's a way to describe it, yes. There has
How
been
many
a
years
change.
ago? 40 years ago?
40?
Okay.
Yeah, in the 1980s is when the body of case law surrounding race and gerrymandering started to develop.
And some of these districts are legacy districts that were formed under voting rights lawsuits. And as time has gone by, y'all have, your predecessors approved and the Justice Department approved under Section 5 those districts. But since the case he mentioned last time, the Shelby County case, this year, for the first time, we're not dealing with Section 5. So, but we still have those legacy districts that were formed under prior law.
Yeah, we had two. He mentioned three, but he said it a different way, which I understand the difference in it. But we originally had two, whatever you call them, districts.
Well, majority, minority?
Right.
Okay.
You call them legacies.
I'm just saying our districts were initially formed under prior case law.
Sure.
But they've survived the current case law.
Right. They did in 10.
And did in 10.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, and if I could, Chair Davis and Commissioners, we are drawing districts in a season in our country and our state in particular where, redistricting is highly litigious. And so we are coming to you with a very risk-averse mentality to how we draw these districts. And so when we are approaching District 2 and adjusting the numbers, it is with I wouldn't say extreme, but a very risk-averse mentality, which we wanted to put forth to the board. That's not to say having a higher percentage, if that's what the board wants, is not defensible and would not, go through without any challenge. It's just that when we first sat down and draw the maps and worked with the demographers, we were trying to eliminate any potential risk, and that's a potential risk we identified and we tried to address.
I think what several members of this board is trying to do is give you a little more leeway in a diplomatic manner.
Well, the idea of 4 maps, that's a perfectly fine way to proceed. Are there any guidance on how you would like the different maps to vary? Any thoughts you'd like to put into those? Because I suspect we could get closer to the mark if we had some guidance versus us drawing them on our own.
I think probably you need to ask that question when we let you do your presentation, and we're probably going to change our minds some more as we go through it possibly. And get better educated.
All right. Well, at that point, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Mr. Morrison.
Yes, sir.
Who can give you a little bit of an overview.
And we're not trying to disrupt an order that you got.
No.
I personally don't like somebody to do that to me, so I somewhat apologize.
Well, I want you to rest assured, we are here for you. So however you want to do the order and however you want to interrupt us as we go through, please do.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Morrison, are you there?
I sure am. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Good, okay. Let me, before I get into my, what I have to say beyond what Craig has said, let me just clarify 2 things. When you looked at that first set of the table of data that showed that District 3 and District 6 also seemed to be overpopulated. So you got 4 districts overpopulated, or 3 districts overpopulated. The districts 2 and 5 that we highlighted there are ones that were severely overpopulated or underpopulated. District 3 has 14,190 people. That's only 60 people too many. And District 6 has 14,210. And we didn't highlight those because those are easy things to fix. You just have to move a couple of blocks around. So they don't pose any problem. That could be done as kind of a cleanup operation. So I want you to just think of the fact that we had, starting out, we had one district that was severely overpopulated and one that was severely underpopulated. So that means we have to really do some major surgery rather than just kind of adjust a boundary here and there with a little tweak, which hope, that's the kind of thing we had hoped would happen, but not at all possible. Let me just begin by saying that I'm the demographer in this engagement. I don't, I don't have a dog in this race. I'm just working with the numbers that just came out of the 2020 census. I've been doing this for probably 15 or 20 years all over the country in probably a dozen or 24 states. And most of the time, what I've been engaged for is between the census years. After there's a census, several years later, I've been engaged by jurisdictions that called upon me to help them defend their district against a plaintiff who found it a convenient target to highlight and sue and try to collect some money. Sometimes they're doing it for a worthy cause. A lot of times the plaintiffs are just doing it to collect, a payday. So I have a lot of background doing this, and I have seen what it looks like, primarily through the eyes of defendants' attorneys who have dealt with the kinds of litigation that was going on sort of from about 2014, 2015 on, oftentimes at the municipal level, county level, and so forth. Craig has outlined the legal parameters that I'm working with, and I want to just amplify on some of the things that matter here. This first slide is just to remind you the districts have to be nearly equal in population, plus or minus 5%. And the important thing is that the plan must comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. Section 5 is no longer in place, but the Department of Justice just about a week or so ago issued its latest set of guidelines about, what they are going to be doing. They're not requesting, a report from the Section 5 states, so, for them to approve. But what they are doing is they're alerting anyone who has a question or a problem to please contact the Department of Justice if you think you don't like what's going on. So that opens up a very wide possible arena of people who might say, I'm just a plain old citizen here, but I don't like what's going on here, and you ought to take a look at the district these guys are forming, which is why I'm focusing, your attention on the cracking and packing. And one thing I wanted to add to what Craig said is, it's one thing for there to exist the District 2 that is heavily packed with African American eligible voters. It's a legacy. And then when I consider what happens if you approve a plan that preserves that packing, when another alternative would be to say somehow get that 74.3% black among eligible voters down somewhat and somehow funnel that voting strength to to another district that could be enhanced, and that in this case was District 6. District 6 is 54.8%, and in the recommended plan, just so you notice it, District 6 enjoys a 62% share, which means that it is a black control district rather than a black opportunity district. And so I think one of the previous speakers made note of that. So it's not just undoing packing, but it's focusing the voting strength that is undone in another place where it can make a difference and either create another majority district or strengthen one that is already there. And so that's an important distinction to keep in mind. So I'm going to start out by just, noting that the first graphic that we saw, if I can have the next graphic, you see here, we've obviously got something we have to correct. And as I noted before, you've got districts 3 and 6, which are also they just need to be fine-tuned, so they're not problems. But 2 and 5 really kind of throw a monkey wrench into the underlying structure of the way the districts are drawn. So that's what I've focused on. And the total population, as Craig has explained, that's the metric that we use. And the percent black, just so you know, this is a measure of the eligible voter age population. That is to say, the black population 18 and older is what we're computing this on. And you can see that you have what I'd call a bare majority in District 1. You've got District 2 with a 74% majority, which I think in today's world, my experience would be flagged right away by any plaintiff as packing, or a district that is packed, not that you did it, but you may concur in its continuing in its packed state. And then you have District 6, which is 55%, and that is about it. So you have sort of a 51% district in District 1, which is, I would say, is maybe a toss-up district, depending on differential turnout. So that's what we start with. Can I have the next slide now?
Could I ask one question?
Sure, yeah. Before we interrupt anytime you have a question, it's easier that way.
You indicated that the percent black is of the voting age population? Did you?
That is correct.
So the 40.7% is not the African-American population in the county, it's the African-American population 18 and older in the county.
That's correct.
Okay.
Does that help explain
I
it?
didn't realize that. And
Okay.
that's whether they're registered to vote or not registered to vote.
That is correct. It is the population that could exercise the voting strength of the black population concentrated in any district, and that becomes a matter of turnout, and you know it's what we can make of this.
Thank you.
Sure. So moving on to the plan.
Peter, I'm sorry, we have a
Yeah,
question
go
from
ahead.
one of the commissioners.
Sure.
That method to calculate percent of minorities, why don't you use that same calculation or the same method to utilize, to come up with total population in the district?
It's a good question, and that would capture in one's mind a clearer representation of one person, one vote. I think you see the connection there, and that is a hidden tension within the law right now. The law, depending on what state you're talking about, the law says you could distribute population equally based on voting age population, but that is not how it is being done, and it's not clear that that is how it could be done in your state. And that poses kind of a big constitutional issue, which I'm not qualified to go into, but it very definitely picks up the notion of why don't we just equalize the number of voters, the number of eligible voters. And you can imagine what this would look like if you took this to California, or possibly a state that has a high percentage of Latino adults who are not yet citizens, who would not be part of that population. It's a tricky question. I don't want to digress here, but you've hit upon an important idea, but one that is very controversial.
Well, if we do future charts like this, could we see the percent of whatever you're showing, whether it be minorities or whatever, or blacks or whatever it might be, with both percentages being one voting age and total population?
We could do that. It's going to be another another step in what's going on, and I would, you know, I can tell you that in your county, it probably will not be very different because I don't think you have any significant non-citizen population, if I remember correctly, and I'm not sure there's much of an age difference, so that you'd say there are a lot more, a much higher proportion of the African-American population is, let's say, under 18 than is the case among the white population. But that's something that can be done. You know, we do have the data for it.
Well, actually, if you take your first chart, the old districts, and you multiply out the population times the percentages that you show for blacks there versus the total population multiplied out, there's 400 people lost somewhere, and I was wondering why that was, and now I understand why it was, because you're using two different data on this same chart.
Yes, there are basically two different parameters, and these are the two different measures that are ordinarily looked to by courts when they judge whether a plan is properly balanced. If you were to consider substituting the voting age population for the column of data that's labeled total population, I think you would then be basically opening up the question of whether the plan still was in the guardrails based on total population. And I don't know what it would show. I suspect it would probably give you this more or less the same need to recognize overpopulated districts and underpopulated ones. But that's not an exercise we did because it has nothing to do with the task that I was given demographically, which is to, you know, equalize the population based on the metric that the courts recognize, which is total population, not voting age population.
I would suggest that we do that exercise. I'd be more concerned with what came behind that to, one, make sure we understood how it was calculated, but two, maybe show it also how your total population numbers would look as well for whatever you're delineating out like you did here. Because my first concern when I got this data over the weekend, it seemed like we were only focusing on percentage of blacks, just based on what we got. And I made a comment to that effect, but of course I now understand that that probably isn't so because you were working with precincts more than anything else maybe. I'm not sure what you concentrated on. But that's why I want to learn as much as I can today, and then we can answer your previous question, I think, as a board, Craig.
Sure.
If I may, I think we've got to use the actual census, the population. That's
Sure.
number one.
Yes, sir.
What I think is being requested is two columns, one with the percentage voting age African-American population, and another column of the actual census of African-American population.
Correct.
Yeah, and that,
Now, you understand that under the total population column, if you multiply that by the percent black, you will have the voting age population. I'm sorry, you're wrong. I see what you're getting at. Yeah, we can add another column of data there showing the voting age population, and then the percentage, another column also to show the percentage black among the total population.
Right.
Whereas now it's the percentage you see is the percentage among the voting age population. I hear what you're saying, and that's something that can be done, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, okay if I go on now?
yes.
This is the original configuration of your districts, and given the fact that we have two districts that we have to sort of do surgery on, districts 2 and 5, and also the way in which the districts that you see here, 2, 6, and 7, are aligned. They're kind of, you know, one is overlaid on the other one as you move westward. You know, 6 is overlaid on 2, and 7 kind of is overlaid on 6 and 2. It creates some real problems for how we could work with this and say, well, why don't we just decant a little population from 2 into some other place,
6 and 2.
and then from that other place into some other place. It's not an easy configuration to adjust. So we looked at it and we said it not only is not easy to adjust, but it pretty much doesn't pass the eyeball test, which is the informal way of saying it looks like it's gerrymandered, although not necessarily for political purposes, and it may well be that the boundaries just aren't, you know, I don't know what the exact boundaries are. But we look at this and say this is not a good starting point for us, but we understand that this, you know, what you see, 2, 6, and 7 are kind of what we're starting with. And then you have 1 above, which is the barely majority black district now that we need to pay attention to and keep that so that it does not in any way look like it's been diluted. Certainly we wouldn't want that to be reduced below 51%, because that would definitely not look very good. So we tried to account for the next most important consideration here, just, you know, the way it should look, which is to say, where are the communities of interest here? Setting aside race and ethnicity and, you know, whatever else there may be. And that led us to compare the precinct boundaries, which I think we may have to scroll ahead a bit on. Yeah, go ahead. I think one more, if I remember correctly. Yeah. The precinct boundaries in the plan that we're, you know, the revised plan that we suggested, you can see that we have pursued that as an important redistricting consideration among the several that we could have, we had some latitude to, you know, to work with. We thought that having precinct boundaries followed wherever possible was really a way of simplifying how you run elections. And if you compare this map with the one that's 1 or 2 before it, you can see how the precincts looked on the old map. Just if you can move back 1 or 2 maps, I think you'll see what that looks like.
The overlay? Is he asking for?
Let's see, we have here,
Peter.
we don't have the precincts, but what we have here are, actually, why don't you just leave it here, because it shows the original boundaries overlaid on our first plan that we've brought forward for you. And what I can point out here is, you know, having shown you that we tried to adhere to precinct boundaries, here I want to show you where we're moving territory around, and it perhaps is best for me to just walk you through this now, because this is really where stakeholders care, depending on which district they're in. Now, if you look at District 1, which is 51% black and is within the guardrails of total population, we kind of looked at that and said we'd like to just leave that alone. And so you'll see there's a little bit of what I'll call manicuring around the edges. A little bit of 1 goes into 7, a little bit of 7 goes into 1 to the west. and a little bit of 4 goes into 1, and then a little bit more of 4 westward goes in, and then if you look in the center, a little bit of 1 goes into 4.
Question.
These are the kinds of
Could I ask
what
one
I call
question?
manicuring that goes on.
Since 3 of the districts are clearly within the plus or minus 5, and District 1 is within the plus or minus 5, what made you change District 1 at all?
I don't know that I can answer that other than to say we were undoing population from District 2 and District 6. And if you look at the new plan, you can see that the numbers on those districts are reversed. And I can't tell you why we did what we did in each district other than to say in the case of District 1, we tried to avoid several things, one of which is throwing it out of population balance. And another, I believe, probably the more common consideration was attempting to align precinct boundaries throughout the plan, which, you know, requires balancing things that are all interconnected. The precinct boundaries are what makes for the interconnectedness, even though you might look at District 1 and say, it was okay before, why don't you just leave it alone? Because sometimes we need to decant a little bit of population from one district into another so that it can then go on to yet a third district.
A domino effect, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically a domino effect.
I understand that, but, and I can see why you would change a compliant district to tweak it to get the precinct boundaries in line so you have less split precincts. My question, and I would hope this will be one of your 4 that's been requested, is why you would not take approximately 800 voters from 5, put it in 2, and then tweak 3 and 6 just enough to add 100 or less voters. And that way, 1, 4, and 7 stays the same.
I don't think I can answer that off the bat other than to say there are a lot of interconnections that are involved, and looking at any one district and saying, can you just kind of put it back to the way it was before? What that ends up doing sometimes, and in fact, invariably, is it narrows the ways in which we can adjust other districts. And so what our objective is not to keep it exactly the same, but to say we've left it pretty much untouched in order to perform the major surgery that has to be performed elsewhere, and basically take a 74% African American district and try to reduce it so that it's not packed. That was our preeminent objective, to avoid, you know, kind of a red flag that would attract a plaintiff. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and it seems like a reasonable question. And it could be that when we get a final draft version of some plan, you could look at it and say, is there some small adjustment you could make? But what I can tell you right now is this plan is very delicately balanced and starting to unravel the peripheral changes that don't figure centrally into the issues, basically destroys its integrity and puts us back into a situation where a plaintiff would say, well, you could have done what you did here, at least, you know, we reconstructed something like it, but what you've done is you've left the remnants of packing, or you have perhaps done something else that disadvantaged blacks. And it's a dangerous place to go. That's the only thing I can tell you at this early stage.
Thank you.
So I think I want to go on to the parts of this that are, you understand what vote dilution is, and basically just to really simplify what vote dilution is, vote dilution occurs where there is any remnant of black voters being spread too thinly across several districts when a plaintiff claims they could have been more highly concentrated in just one district, affording them a greater voice in electing the contestant that black voters favor. That is kind of the headline objective, or I should say the headline problem that we are trying to avoid. And I'm going to go through because a lot of this has already been covered. I want to say, kind of in closing, that my role in this process is really to assist you in revising your current plan, first of all, so that it doesn't present the specter of any legal challenge. And secondly, we want to balance your own collective priorities. And we are kind of making the assumption that what you'd like to have is boundaries that are not as bizarrely shaped, and would also like to see them aligned with something that matters a lot to you, or should matter, which is your existing precinct boundaries. So if precincts are not as important as something else, I'd like to open up the question of what else matters beside not changing certain things. It may be that incumbency matters. That is a legitimate redistricting criterion, and where it does matter, it is possible to address that. Or I should say it may be possible.
I think you, if I may, I think you hit on the things we want to look at. We don't want to double bunk any of the 7 commissioners. We want them to be as compact as possible. No I-85 type districts. And we do, where possible, want to make it as easy as possible on our Board of Elections when splitting precincts. We don't want precincts split among 3 or 4 different districts. At most, we would want a precinct split among 2, but we would prefer, as much as possible, precincts to be whole in one district. But I understand the need when you're splitting a county like this into 7 districts, that you will inevitably need to split some precincts.
Well, that's a very helpful kind of listing of factors. And to that, I would suggest you tell me also where risk aversion fits in, because these are all perfectly reasonable things to aspire to and to agree that you want. And what I would like to know is, what are your priorities? I would think that my way of thinking of it would be that you'd want to be, first of all, risk averse. You don't want to get sued. Secondly, there are obviously stakeholders, so avoiding double bunking. And compactness is a good one to be a third one. And then where possible, try to go easy on the Board of Elections, and try not to have any precinct that has more than 2 districts it has to deal with. If we can agree on those as the priorities, in descending order of importance, where risk aversion is number 1, double bunking is number 2, that's a good starting point for me to take this plan and say, well, how can we achieve those? And I would submit that risk aversion, if it's the top priority, would be, let's start with the delicate balance that we have now in this first new plan, and then let's work on the next 3 priorities without, in any way threatening the integrity of assuring that no plaintiff could look at what you've done and say, well, they made decisions, they adopted a new plan, but we've still got them because they did X. That's where my antenna are. But if I'm wrong, just let me know. I've got 4 things written down here. You can put them in whatever priority you like because that's your prerogative.
I think that, I don't know that you got all the board priorities listed there. What I'm hearing from the majority of the board is they would also like to consider, I think we're all satisfied with our districts as they are. And I think we should put on that priority list, whether it be number 1 or where this board can agree to fit it in, to maintain the districts as close as they are as we can do. Certainly precinct makes it easier to try to keep it into when possible. And I'm kind of a wild card operator, and that doesn't reflect on the board. The whole board doesn't agree that way, but risk aversion to me is not the number 1 factor that I would have on the list. But I'm only speaking for myself when I make that statement. We don't have controversy among our board. We get along very well. Our voters have very few complaints about the way our district are, if any. I don't know that I've ever heard any since the last redistricting. So I would say definitely suggest to keep the districts as close as they are on the list of priorities.
I think I may not, it may not be clear from what I said, but implicitly that would be our starting point if it was one that could work. And what I think I'm here to tell you, and I didn't realize, I guess I didn't make it clear, taking the plan that you now have and adjusting it as little as possible in order to meet priorities 2, 3, 4, and 5 is mathematically impossible. I mean, that's the message I need to communicate to you. There is no way that anyone can take your plan as it now exists and make just, some changes in the order of priority, being avoid double bunking, compactus, and then where possible, try to follow precinct boundaries. You're stuck with a problem that doesn't have a solution the way the plan is now configured, and we need to start with a completely different configuration, because our starting point originally was, how can we adjust this mathematically so that we don't have to change the districts as they now exist? And the answer was quickly apparent. There's no way we can do that. So that unfortunately is the message that I may not have made clear. I should have made clear at the beginning.
Well, and that's why we suggested that we would want to see as many as 4 different variations, and let us as a board decide what level of risk we wish to take.
And Chair Davis, if I may interject. So Peter, what I'm hearing, and we can discuss this further, is it sounds like Mr. Lamb, the county manager, made a suggestion in terms of focusing on population adjustments from District 5 and District 2, trying to leave Districts 1, 4, and 7 as untouched as possible, and then making modest reductions to 3 and 6. That could be an alternative route to go.
Yes, sir.
I think, Peter, your experience is it might not be the solution they want to end on based on the foresight you have into the redrawing process, but it does seem clear that that's an option that the board wants to consider.
Yes, and I've got another commissioner who wishes
Yes.
to speak.
Thank
If we could hear Mr. Arrington.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you clearly, it would
So,
be,
Peter, I'm sorry, one of the commissioners is about to speak. 1 second.
okay, sure.
Well, I was going to say that, yes, maybe you all wish that your district would stay the same, but the population has changed. And I, for one, like the direction that you have started in as far as some moving of the population so that you have some more equitable opportunities for voters to feel like they're participating in a district that possibly, like to say, that they can be represented versus any district, even, like the District 3 and 4 and 5, they are almost 70% majority white. So, and, you have 3 districts that we're trying to keep majority black, and then you have another district that may be possible. It could go either way. And yes, my district, District 1, is almost one that could go either way. But I think in all reason that we have to look at some adjustment that still keeps the boundaries to where there's still the same majority population that we have, but not at those percentages.
And that's why it's important, if I may say, to have various options that we can look at, and then this board, by majority vote, would decide which one is the most popular by a majority of the vote of the board.
So it sounds like you're saying, Commissioner Arrington, that the direction they're going in Plan 1 here, you want to be one of the 4?
Yes, I can support the plan and direction that they are offering.
And that would certainly be one of the 4.
Sure.
Yeah, like I said, Chairman Davis has his opinion, I have mine.
Commissioners, we've discussed 2 options. Is there a third option that comes to mind that you would like to see in light of the things we've been discussing?
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I just want to see the other options, the 4 that he spoke of, and Commissioner Arrington, certainly this one included, but what you said prior to that about 3 and 6 changing, and then the other ones, that's what I want to see. I am not happy with this.
Okay.
It would be 5 and 6.
5 and 6, right. Yeah, I am not too happy with this one right
Okay.
now.
Thank you.
I am not either. I'm not either.
Okay.
Well, that's why, Commissioners, I think we need to have multiple options that show it multiple
Right.
ways, and then,
I
like
agree.
we always do, we're going to vote on it, and
Yeah.
majority carries which option we go with.
Well, if I
I
could.
agree.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That we need more options.
Well, Commissioners, if I could, we've discussed
You
2
got 2.
options, it seems like.
You need 2 more.
The current option, which is not satisfying to all the board members. Another option, which I'll call, for lack of a better term, the Lamb option, since
Right.
we're kind of working off his initial suggestions, which I think maps with what a lot of the commissioners like. Is there a third option that comes to mind in terms of a direction we might want to go in that might be worth considering for the board? Or do we just want to start with 2 options, and then we could kind
We
of
would
build
want
consensus?
4, because I'm a person of habit, and we had 4 before. But it may be best to get each board member a night's sleep, and then let the manager and the attorney know what other option we want to get back to you. Unless a board member has a third option sitting here today, we could certainly entertain that. Mr. Outlaw, you're with us and keeping up, I hope, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything come to your mind as a third option? Or do you need a
to give
night's
that
sleep
some
as well?
thought, sir.
What's that, sir?
That's something I would need to think on a little bit.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
one option would be,
You already got yours, sir.
I know,
Go
call
ahead.
it lamb two.
Okay.
Is to split the baby between those two options to reduce plus or minus a few percentage the change in District 2. And so instead of 20 points, maybe 10 or 12 or 8 points. And District 6 and 7, instead of 8 points, 4, 5, or 6 points change. Something in between the two that might be a consensus.
I think we really, as a board, need a day to look at the other two options, and certainly members should discuss with you, Mr. Lamb. You have a great amount of expertise in this, but y'all certainly work with Mr. Lamb as well as you got questions, who was working with Mr. Durham, and maybe we could get back with you with two additional options.
Certainly.
Y'all are the masters at it. Does anything else come to your mind that we may want to consider?
Well, I have to be honest, you're really the masters at this because this is your county. And so when we look at a map, we're looking at it really in kind of a vacuum. And so when you look at it, you see things that we don't see. So
Understood.
guidance from you is far more helpful than us just taking a swing at it.
Okay. I appreciate that answer.
And if I could, Commissioner Wilkins and Commissioner Belfield, to the extent you have any specific concerns or things you'd like to see changed on the map we presented, that might be informative. But to the extent you don't have anything in particular that you'd like to share, that's fine as well. But that would be helpful. In terms of feedback of what you don't like about the current map, that would be very informative as we go about this process.
Would it be, do you want them to talk to you directly, or do you want them to talk with the manager and let him relay it to you?
Whatever's most convenient for the commissioners.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, well, I believe my instruction is primarily to hear from Mr. Z. Lamb next and work with him, and we'll present 4 maps for the commission to review by the time we meet next.
Yeah, I think we would be relaying to him a couple of other options as a board working together that he would get to you.
All right?
And we'll be in touch.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure we'll be in conversation.
Is there more to your presentation?
No, not at this point.
You do have a resolution that's presented to.
Yeah, I see our board of directors in the audience. John, when this board gets through working on this, we're going to bring it over to you in a nice envelope. Anything you'd like to say while you're here, sir?
My only comment would be that all possible, please try to wrap it up by the first week in November. So I can get on that right after I canvass the municipal election, because I don't have a whole lot of time to do. County commissioners, congressional, Senate, House, possibly city right now, all in less than 4 weeks. And a lot of this stuff is done manually. If it's a split precinct, have keyed in manually, road by road. So it takes time.
Is that doable in y'all's mind, sir?
It is doable. You know, a lot of it depends on the ability for the board to pick a map that it likes and move forward, so.
Can somebody tell the board what the schedule is moving forward? And what meeting we would sign off on it on? It's almost got to be in October, hasn't it?
Yeah, we would need, it may be a special meeting. Do we have a regular meeting in October, a second meeting?
No.
Okay, we probably will need to have a separate
Separate meeting.
meeting in October,
John, your date was what?
November 1.
November 1.
Early, so that I can start by November 10th.
Okay.
That way you get it to GIS, he can run what I need to have, and I can get on it by the weekend or something now.
Okay.
Yeah, the Board of Elections throughout North Carolina are going to be very busy this fall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're going to have a lot of
yeah, a lot.
GIS work to do.
Yeah.
Understood.
Could I ask one question if everybody is finished?
Sure.
Sure, go ahead, Peter.
My question would be, can you give me some notion of what the priority is for avoiding double bunking insofar as possible, or is that not, I mean, where does that fit into the priorities in looking at some other alternatives? Is that always a high priority or medium priority or low priority or what?
I think that would be a showstopper.
That's what I was assuming, but I wanted to hear it
It's an easy
from you.
priority, in my opinion. It shouldn't be a problem to avoid double bunking, given the lack of very large differential in the population numbers and the districts.
Well, if it's legal, I think, and a board member can disagree with me, but I think that would be the first priority.
Okay, that's what I assumed.
Anybody disagree with that? Yeah, let's leave that as number one.
All right.
Amanda, did you have some, when I asked you, Craig, is that both of you, or does she have a part as well?
No, I got to run the show today, so we take turns.
You just told which one was which, but thank you, sir.
All right.
Now I know who's who.
All right.
We do need to adopt this resolution.
Why would we do that before we see the other?
That's my
plan?
concern, Mr. Belfield.
So what?
That's my concern. Go ahead with your
Yeah.
question.
Why would we be voting on this until we see the other plans?
We're not voting on a plan here.
I know you're not, but it says basically we agree.
So the resolution that we've drafted is a finding that under the current plan, in light of the current population, there is an imbalance in the districts that requires the board to draw new districts. And then it stops there. It doesn't talk about what districts need to be redrawn. So this
All
is
it
simply-
says is we agree we've got to draw new districts.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I would ask, and this is for attorney, could we remove substantial and just say resolution finding inequality for redistricting purposes?
We actually cannot. So substantial inequality is the language that's in the statute itself, and so we would recommend keeping that very language. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Substantial been,
It's a term of art.
and it described the 5% each way.
Correct.
Mr. Belfield, does that answer your question? Satisfactory?
Well, I just don't want to vote on it.
That probably means you're not
without
going to
seeing
vote on it then, doesn't it?
Without seeing some revisions in what we had today.
What I understand it, Mr. Belfield, is we're only saying that we agree that the districts are out of balance enough that we've got to redraw districts.
I understand that, which resolution, and it's a binding, in this resolution binding?
The census is binding. The census has come down, and all you're saying is the census, it's so that we have an inequality, it's black and white.
Well, I know that.
That was a poor choice of words, but
Well,
I
I
know
hope they would
based on-
understand that.
I know based on the districts where they are now, there's an imbalance there.
yes, sir.
I know that.
That's all you're saying here.
Yeah, which means, I'm saying if this is binding, that means that we got to do something. There must be some changes made.
We do.
The federal law requires it.
Call a question.
I'd entertain a motion this time to approve the resolution before us.
So move, Mr. Chairman, we approve the resolution.
Moved by Commissioner Ayrton. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wilkins. Any questions, any more questions or discussion? Anything else, Mr. Belfield? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign?
No,
Okay, that's 6-1. We thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, we now move to item number 6, which is the Nash County Senior Service Update, and I'll call on Ashley Winston at this time to make this presentation. Well, Commissioners, that number 5 was our outside presenter for this month, and this is our inside presenter for this second meeting of the month. Welcome, ladies.
Good afternoon.
How you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. September is National Senior Center Month, and we are happy to have both centers open to allow participants and guests to come participate in activities and socialize in person. We never imagined we would be closed for 481 days, but before we reopened, a lot of thought and discussions went into how it would take place to ensure the safety of participants and staff. On July the 7th, both centers opened, with the operating hours of Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 4. Preventative measures in place are as follows. Masks are required for everyone. Each room has hand sanitizer and sanitizing wipes available. Plexiglass is hanging in rooms that require spacing for social distancing. Chairs, tables, and equipment are wiped down after each program. Programs are offered at a reduced capacity. Social distancing is enforced throughout the building. Fitness rooms are wiped down by staff periodically throughout the day, and no outside communal food is permitted. For both centers, it has been a phased process, with a system in place for appointments for cards, fitness room, and fitness classes. Due to lower participation numbers, appointments were phased out, but pre-registration is still required. Our Operation Fan Heat Relief Program that we hold annually in July was still offered through funding from our Area Agency on Aging. In July, the daily average attendance for the Nash Senior Center was 43.67 people, and for Southern Nash, it was 21.71. On August the 2nd, we opened full-time with normal business hours of Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Both centers closed to the public with guidance from our Nash County Health Department from August the 11th to August 20th due to potential COVID exposures. We then reopened to the public August the 23rd. At our Nashville Senior Center, our foot clinic was held on August the 2nd, but due to our closure, we had to discontinue that service, and they actually resumed today with appointments. A survey was sent out via Facebook, Constant Contact, and available in person regarding our operating hours. Previously, the hours had been Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Fridays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Due to the response of the survey, the plan going forward is to remain open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with no extended hours. At our Southern Nash Senior Center, our in-person bingo started back with a limit of 20 people, and pre-registration is required. Our grocery box pickup in partnership with the farmers market, we were able to distribute 888 grocery boxes to our seniors in the southern part of the county, 74 boxes per week for 12 weeks, and our last distribution day was September the 16th. At both centers, in-person craft and instructor-led fitness classes have started back. We will begin having socials in September, and actually we held our first one today at the Nash, the Fiesta program. Pre-registration is required, and a limited number of tickets are available based on our room sizes. Staff continues to monitor mask wearing and encouraging social distancing. Our open enrollment period for SHIP will begin October the 15th, and it will run through December the 7th. SHIP appointments will be offered in person or via phone, depending on the volunteer representative. Our Stockings for Seniors program will begin taking donations and applications starting November the 1st through November the 30th. In August, the daily average attendance for the Nash was 88.71, and the Southern Nash Senior Center was 21.86. We have a new senior center program system called My Senior Center, so everybody is having to re-register. Currently, our member numbers for the Nash are 548, and for Southern Nash, they were 349 in the month of August. It has been important to keep our services for homebound clients going as much as possible, and although we saw several changes for our home delivered meal program and our frozen meal programs, we were able to continue to provide food, through our staff and volunteers. Medical transportation through Tar River Transit resumed in July. Project Lifesaver and family caregiver programs continued for those clients as well, providing resources, supplies, and support. We will also be holding our Nash County Walk to Defeat Dementia on October the 9th at Ennis Park. We just want to say thank you for all your support during COVID and beyond, and we're excited to have our senior centers back open and hope that we can continue to stay open. Any questions?
Any questions for Ashley at this time? I would like to know who you have with you.
This is Allison. Allison Barrett is from our Southern Nash Senior Center.
Okay, Allison. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you.
Is it possible to get that data sent to the board?
Yes.
You talk fast and you went through that quick, so we could, spend a little bit more time looking at it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be great. Any other questions?
No, just
Mr.
thank
Chairman,
you.
I've
Thank
got-
you for your
I've got one
service.
question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Outlaw. Go
For
ahead.
the Southern Senior Center, has there been any request from citizens in the area to have classes at the center taught by Nash Community College?
Yes. So we will be starting our computer classes. Do you want to elaborate?
So we're going to start having computer classes in October. An instructor from the college will come over, and we have 3 different classes set up October, November, and December. We have to have 6 participants registered for the class for the instructor to come hold it. And right now we're at 5 for the October class, so we just need 1 more. So if anybody knows anybody around the southern part of the county who would like a beginner computer class, we need 1 more to be able to hold the class in October.
Have you had requests for any other classes?
No.
We discussed some options with Nash Community College about potential other classes, but we've not actually had people requesting them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'll ask one. What's the, say, the beginning, to be considered a senior and be involved with senior citizens?
For our senior centers, it has to be 60 and older due to our Old American Act funding.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate everything you do. All right, that was item number 6. We'll move to item number 7, which is a Community Development Block Grant Neighborhood Revitalization. And I'll call on Ms. McGee at this time.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, ma'am.
You may have noticed earlier that Mike Barnett of McDavid Associates, who assists Nash County with our CDBG NR program, was here, but he had to leave because he had another public hearing in another jurisdiction. But Nash County is in the process of closing our 2018 CDBG NR, I keep saying DR, project, which makes it eligible to again apply for another neighborhood revitalization grant. And the 2018 Community Development Block Grant for neighborhood revitalization included grading and paving at Peel Drive, which is in southern Nash County near Bailey, and associated storm drain improvements with that, as well as the housing rehabilitation of 2 homes and the housing replacement of 2 homes. But the 2021 grant application is due October 14th. So Nash County intends to apply for up to $750,000 of 2021 funds, and if awarded, this would be used to help low to moderate income homeowners with housing repairs through forgiven deferred payment loans, possibly along with supporting activities such as street and/or utility improvements in a neighborhood. The county would make good faith efforts to involve historically underutilized businesses and Section 3 individuals and businesses in executing the program. as we normally do. 2 public hearings are required in order to submit this application, and in your packet is a copy of the notice for today's public hearing. And this notice was published August 31st in the Rocky Mountain Telegram. And we did also run 2 other ads related to this project. A notice where we're seeking applications for the 2021 CDBG NR program, and those applications would be due by September 30th to our community development specialist. And we also have already run the ad for the second public hearing, which would be October 4th. So the recommended action today is only to hold a public hearing.
Okay, any questions from Patsy on this item? Not, I entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wilkins, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Belfield. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in a public hearing for the 2021 Community Development Block Grant Neighborhood Revitalization. If there's someone here from the public that wishes to speak on this item, the board would be pleased to hear from you at this time. If you would come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Anyone wish to speak on it? Seeing no one moving, I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Combs, second by Commissioner Wilkins. Any questions on that motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries as well. Is there any other discussion or questions of Patsy? And that's all we'll do today, and we'll take a vote after the second public hearing. Any other questions or comments? Patsy, is this about the amount that we normally receive, the $250,000?
750,000.
750
Yes,
is what I
sir.
meant to say, yeah.
This has been the set amount for some time
Right,
now.
that's what I thought.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Excuse me, do you have a question, Mr. Aaron?
What area was this grant was gonna?
We're eligible to apply for these funds anywhere in Nash County excluding within the city of Rocky Mount, because they
have
also
their own
have
program.
similar program.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Next item on the agenda is item number 8. It is a resolution authorizing viable utility reserve grant application. Call on Mr. Boone's assistant at this time. Welcome, Mike.
Good afternoon. Sorry you had to step away. Grant funding is available through the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality Viable Utility Reserve Fund to address needs focused on long-term viability of publicly owned and operated water and sewer systems. Based on the availability of said funding and the need for a comprehensive inventory of the county's utility system, Public Utilities and Facilities Department recommends that the county apply for grant funding to be used for this purpose. The primary goal of the study will be to assess and map the existing infrastructure. The evaluation will also look at financial elements of the water and sewer system in order to assess long-term financial stability of the utility. The Public Facilities and Utilities Department recommends that Nash County Board of Commissioners approve the attached resolution and authorize the board chair to execute same on behalf of the county.
Any questions of Mike on this item? Do we have the resolution? Madam Clerk,
That's what I was wondering, I thought.
we do.
It's here.
Okay. I'm looking at it a different way because my thing would come up, it's a little bit hard for me to find stuff. As long as it's here, that's fine. Any questions from anyone? What I need then is a motion to approve the resolution and authorize the board chair to sign on behalf of the county.
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Outlaw. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Arrington. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries as well. Thank you, Mike. The next item is item number 9, which is a resolution authorizing North Carolina DEQ merger/regionalization facility grant application. Explain to us what that one is. I think I know, but not sure.
Well, this one, I know Jonathan's going tonight to the Town of Bailey meeting to discuss with them, and I think he's had some discussions with Middlesex, but this is kind of getting us ahead of that and approving the application for the grant study. You know, we would be ahead of that, and then after, if they continue on and they both approve it, then we would have already approved it.
Right.
It's available through the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality to fund merger, regionalization feasibility studies for water and sewer systems within the state. Based on the availability of said funding and the ongoing challenges faced by Nash County, the Town of Bailey, and the Town of Middlesex with regards to existing and future wastewater needs, the Public Utilities and Facilities Department recommends that the county apply for a grant to fund a study to study this issue. The primary goal of the study will be to evaluate the alternatives that focus on how these entities could best work together to address the need. So the Public Utilities and Facilities Department recommends the Nash County Board of Commissioners approve the attached resolution and authorize the board chair to execute same on behalf of the county.
What this derived from, for the board's benefit, is the ongoing issue in Middlesex and Bailey for sewer expansion and to allow those there, but our interest is certainly to help the two towns, but also because we have an industrial park down there that we have a limitation on the type of clients that we can put down there. We would certainly love to see this move forward. So Jonathan had the idea, as well as Mr. Lamb, to start working with those two towns to see if the county assisted that we could move this forward, because it seemed to have been stagnant, as I'm sure Mr. Combs, Ms. Leggett could say, for a long time. And we're just hoping to get it jump-started so we can find a solution for both of those towns, as well as the investment the county has made there in the Middlesex Industrial Park. Any questions on this item? All right, what I need here is a same motion to entertain approval of the resolution and authorize the board chair to execute on behalf of the county.
Make a motion, we approve.
All right, motion by Commissioner Combs, there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leggett. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries as well. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Does anybody need a break? This
Yep.
is going to take a little bit of time.
I do.
You do, okay. We'll take about a 10-minute pause at this time. I call us back to order at this time. You with us, Mr. Outlaw?
He's there. Yeah, he's here. He might be muted.
Can you hear us, Mr. Outlaw?
I'm not muted, I'm here.
Yeah, okay, he's
Okay.
here.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open back up. We're on item number 10, which is American Recovery Plan. I'm going to try to move us along as quick as we can. We took a lot of time, but I do have an MPO meeting at 4:30 brushed over that I would like to attend if I could, but if I can't, I just can't. All right, go ahead, Ms. Wood.
The ARPA, or ARPA, is the American Rescue Plan Act passed into law March 2021. ARPA, specifically the state and local fiscal recovery funds provided to help local governments in the recovery from the COVID pandemic. Nash County received the first half of the $18,316,281 of the ARPA funding in May 2021. The other half is expected to come to the county in May 2022. The money is being held in a special fund until we as a community decide how best to spend it. The county manager appointed an 8-person committee, including 2 commissioners and 6 county staff, to work on setting a framework for the use of the ARPA funds for Nash County. The attached document includes a draft of the current framework. The federal government is still considering uses for ARPA funds through interim guidance, and more final guidance is expected in the coming months. The current guidance allows ARPA funds to be used to support 5 main categories. They are support public health expenditures, address negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency, replace lost government services revenue, provide premium pay for essential workers, and invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. The attached draft framework is brought to the board for approval as presented to move forward designing details for each of the categories that we've established. Would you like me to read through the framework with our categories?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The first item that we have is under COVID vaccination. This is for county employees to receive, it's an incentive for county employees to get vaccinated based on reaching a 70% vaccination percentage of employees, and we're setting aside $350,000 for that program. The next program is also considered under COVID vaccinations, and this is a vaccination program we'd like to move forward with 12 to 18-year-olds in Nash County to receive a cash card based on receiving vaccinations. That we've set aside $860,000 for that. The next item is personal protective equipment. This is to replenish the county's protective supplies, including sanitizing products and personal protective equipment for any future needs. We've set aside $56,281. The next item is under expenditures for public health, and this is capital investments or physical plant changes to public facilities that respond to COVID-19 public health emergency. We've set aside $2,300,000, and this is for renovation in the detention facility based on a renovation of our current facility for separation of the dormitories. The next item is under public health services. We've set aside $50,000. This is to provide paid sick leave to fully vaccinated Nash County employees to enable compliance with COVID-19 public health precautions. The next item is under drinking water transmission and distribution. We've set aside $8,300,000. This is for future water and sewer extensions to aid in responsible growth and support the creation of affordable housing, as well as increase economic development opportunities in Nash County. And the next item is under infrastructure, also infrastructure. This is broadband. We've set aside $4,500,000 to expand our broadband access and connectivity. Another item is under administrative expenses. This is set aside to employ designated administrative staff to oversee the ARPA funds for Nash County. We're looking at employing 2 positions. We've set aside $350,000. And the final item we have is set aside for pending projects. It's $1,550,000, and this is to obtain potential applications for organizations to submit eligible projects for ARPA funding use.
All right. And what we are bringing this to the board today for is you board members know, the manager appointed a committee of about 10 people that have been meeting for about a month and a half now. We met again this past Friday for about 90 minutes, and we kind of zeroed in on these categories, and we felt like at this time we needed to bring it to the full board to get approval to move forward under the categories that we've got here, understanding that we are still having to verify each one of these things are an approved use of the funds. We've got quite a bit of work to do under several of them. One in particular that comes to mind to myself is the one with the vaccination of the school kids that we've got quite a bit of work to do with our school administration and our school board to make sure we're both on board to do this particular one, which the committee is very much in favor of. And I appreciate Mr. Arrington bringing that to our attention, because it's so important to be able to hopefully keep our kids in school for the full school year, because it's pretty much been determined that we, for the most part, lost a school year last year. And of course, this will be all kids that are in school, regardless of what kind of school they're in or whether they're even homeschooled.
If I may
Yes, sir, please,
add to
Mr.
that. This is, of course, subject to amendment and change. Just today, Pfizer released studies and is asking for emergency authorization to give the vaccine to 5 to 11-year-olds. So that might be something we want to amend in the future.
That's what item 8 is for. It leaves a pocket of money that we have not designated yet, and also want to hear from the public and any organization that has needs out there that will fit under the very tight guidelines that we're operating under, that seem to be getting tighter each meeting we have, quite frankly. Are there any questions from the board members?
Yeah.
Mr. Bellfield?
I was just thinking, and I think I mentioned this before, what's the possibility of using some of these funds in the area of housing, especially affordable, low income, moderate to low income?
I'm going to ask Mr. Lamb to answer that question, or rely on Donna to answer it, whichever he so chooses.
I would rely on Donna to let us know if that's even a category.
It could be based on the different program that would be applied for. It's what we have to consider is a qualified census tract within funding the areas, and then what kind of program that they're offering, meeting the different compliance items within the ARPA funding.
Yeah, well, I had in the back of my mind, maybe on the second wave of money, I believe we're getting, what, half of it now in the first wave, and then in the second, I thought maybe it could be a possibility if you could look at.
This-
Maybe spending some in cooperation with some private enterprise to do affordable housing.
The framework that we presented is making use of all 18 million that we've set aside, the majority being with our water and sewer and our broadband infrastructure items in our detention facility. But we do have a miscellaneous area that we could potentially look into.
And we did receive $9 million in May, and we're expected to receive another $9 million next May. But we're budgeting all 18 million at this time.
And I was looking at broadband, we still have 5,000 homes that still doesn't have access to broadband.
That's an estimated number of the number of homes that we could potentially serve with use of the infrastructure funding with ARPA.
We have actually more than that, Mr. Bellfield.
Yeah, that's a low number.
That
Well, I thought we had a committee on broadband, and I thought they were working with, based on some preliminary reports, that they were working with a company
We are, sir.
that's supplying, putting in the equipment that is necessary so that they have access to broadband.
Yes, sir. You're speaking of the CloudWise company, and yes, we've been working with them for almost 3 years now doing that.
Yeah.
And
So I thought we had really put a much bigger dent in the necessity than you still got 5,000 homes now. That's a lot.
We
Yeah.
do, sir.
we do, and that's probably, as he said, that's probably an underestimated figure. We are applying for a $14 million grant, and in addition to this money. So we're hoping to get that and be able to make a dent in the number of unserved and underserved homes.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
I just
Look-
want-
Yes, sir, I've got, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let
I've
me
got
get
a
Ms.
question when you get around to me.
Okay, I'll be back with you. Ms. Leggett.
I just wanted to piggyback off of Commissioner Belfield and say that if we could, have some of that money set aside for the affordable housing, because that's real in Nash County. We may not see it all the time, but there are organizations out there that are helping those stay in affordable housing and get affordable housing. So if there's any way possible, we could reach out to them and have some of that earmarked for that.
Don, at our next meeting, which is 2 weeks from Friday, would you look at all programs that the state has going to and see what we would be eligible for in the line of housing, affordable housing, and let us know what the ARP funding restrictions are on that, so the committee can take action on that.
Sure.
Okay. Ms. Leggett.
Yes, sir. I see there's $56,000 earmarked for PPE, personal protective equipment, and replenishing our PPE supplies. I'm just wondering, is that enough to cover Nash County and then all of the first responders, be it EMS and fire departments, that all of their PPE is replenished and sufficient moving forward?
We can certainly look into that. I mean, right now, we're looking at face masks and hand sanitizer and that kind of protective gear. So we haven't really moved forward beyond that. But we'll certainly take a look at it.
Necessarily know that a face mask like this and hand sanitizer is really what they need.
All right, Commissioner Outlaw?
Yes, sir. Regarding the vaccination program in the school system, does the school system have access to funds that they could use for this? And if so, why aren't they using it?
Commissioner Outlaw, I don't know that we have the answer to that. They could have some funding. It is an item that was brought up in committee level that we started with the school system, and they seem to be pretty much in favor of it. We are certainly asked that question to them, but our understanding is that maybe not for this particular use. We don't think they had any, but we'll re-verify that.
Okay, well, I think we should verify that. And also, have you had any discussions with the school administrators? Are they receptive to this?
Yes, Mr. Lamb has talked to the superintendent, and I have talked to the chairman several times, and then some of the staff has been talking to the school system staff about this, but we still have some more details to work out. But yes, we have been in full communication with them.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir. Other questions? All right, as I understand it, Donna, what you want is a motion to approve preliminary funding plan that we have in place at this time.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a motion that would approve, and what that does is allow the committee to keep moving forward in the direction that we're moving in, certainly considering the things that were brought to us today? All right, motion by Commissioner Leggett, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Combs. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Wood. Well, item 9, at this time, I'll call on Commissioner Outlaw to lead this discussion.
Thank you, Chairman Davis. We'll call for committee reports now. I'll call on you by district, starting with District 1. If you have a report, then try to present it briefly. If there are no significant items to report, then just move on to the next item. First will be Commissioner Arrington, District 1.
Okay. No real specific items that I met with Spalding Resource Center last week. We had a board meeting. Juvenile crime prevention, we met on Zoom last week also. And the Community Caregivers Advisory Board, I talked with the director this past week. No major developments there.
Any questions for, excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's it.
Any questions for Commissioner Arrington? Hearing none, District 2, Commissioner Belfield.
One committee that I serve on, NEED, which is now NEW, Nash Healthcare Wilson Economic. Nothing real significant other than our board meeting to actually report to the commissioners. As I can recall, I left my notes at home by mistake. Is there anything, I know I see Stacy shaking her head. We didn't have anything that I think was significant, as I can remember, from the agenda to report to the other Board of Commissioners, other than the change of the name is now official. And that's also, it was changed to include Wilson County since NEED is a part of Wilson County. It was, and it still is. So thought it was good to change the name to reflect that. And that's all. And that's supposed to be effective next month, October. We have already approved it in effect for October. And transportation, we won't meet until, well, I think, yeah, next week. Next week, transportation will meet. And I'm just assuming the agenda has not been sent out. So I'm not sure what's going to be on there. But usually, along about this time, we'll be applying for grants from North Carolina, the Department of Transportation. And that is all. The other Down East partnership did not meet this past August and not scheduled to meet at all this month, but they have an open day where they're going to show parents the type of programs that they have to offer, where they supplement daycares. And that's it. JCPC didn't meet. So that's my report.
Any questions for Commissioner Belfield?
Mr. Outlaw,
Hearing none. Yes, sir.
I just point out to the clerk, we have a couple of things there we could update in this category, if you would
Yes,
update those items.
right, the name, and there's a couple of areas, at least one where Ms. Wells is noted as a member, that should be revised as well. Thank you, Chairman Davis. District 3, Commissioner Cone.
Health and Human Services Board did meet Thursday afternoon, and we had a report from the Veterans Department, and they're staying busy. Amy's here. She gave us a report from Social Services, and they're staying busy, and everything relates back to everything's wild because of the COVID. You know, you're short of help. You know, you got folks out sick. And then from the health department, Bill gave us an update, and y'all see this stuff all the time. And one big thing he noted is from one week to another, the numbers of COVID cases have gone up. And it seems like it keeps going up. So his urge was to encourage people to get a shot. And we're just going through this time, and that's what come out of that meeting. Basically, we will be coming. Human Services Board will be coming to the commissioners soon, I hope, with some method that they recommend for identification to go to use our waste sites all over the county, because we're getting a lot of people from other counties using our sites, and it's got to be a problem. And we have looked at what other counties are doing, and that'll be coming to the Board of Commissioners soon. And we'd like your support on that one when it comes. Trillium meets Tuesday, and the Ag Advisory Board has not had a regular meeting. So that's my report.
Any questions for Commissioner Cone? Hearing none. District 4, Commissioner Leggett.
All right, thank you. UNC Nash Healthcare, our board last met September 2nd. We'll meet again on October 7th. They continue to actively recruit physicians to this area in various specialties depending on market need and future market needs. They are continuing to work on their master facilities plan, and this plan really centers around being able to meet our community's long-term health care needs. You know, so there may be things going on around the site that people have questions about or whatever, and that's generally what it's centered around. The Farmers Market Advisory Board has not met. Our STEP board, which is Strategic Twin Counties Education Partnership, last met August 24th and will meet again October 19th. They are continuing to operate amongst the pandemic, continuing to work directly with teachers in Nash and Edgecombe County to reach children and improve their educational outcomes. That's all I have.
Any questions for Commissioner Leggett? Hearing none. District 5, RPO TAC, Transportation Advisory Committee last met on July 21st. There were no significant items to report from this meeting. Next meeting is September the 22nd, this Wednesday. Nash Community College Board of Trustees last met on June the 25th. Catherine Fisher was elected as board chairperson. James Mercer was elected as board vice chair. That's effective July the 1st. An update was given on the Vet Tech edition, with completion expected by approximately June of next year. A couple of new board members. Robbie Green replaces Laura O'Neill, and Natalie Brooks replaces Mary Wells. Nash County Broadband Committee, Ms. McGee advised me that she put out an update to that information today. The next Cloudwise Committee meeting is scheduled for October 13th. Any questions? Hearing none. District 6, Commissioner Gwen Wilkins.
What I have, the only thing I have is that I have located a citizen to apply for the Board of Adjustment, and he has submitted an application, and I hope that that will come before the board in October. That's all I have for District 6, but I want to mimic what Commissioner Cohn said about the COVID-19 vaccination. There was a firefighter by the name of Jeffrey Hager in Huntersville, North Carolina, down by Charlotte, who passed away on September 11th, I believe, from COVID-19. He was a firefighter, EMS, and now his wife has passed away, and they left behind a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 13 and 14-year-old. So you have 4 young children without a mother, without a father. And so I just ask that the citizens of Nash County and anyone hearing this, please take into consideration your children, your loved ones, your family, and get vaccinated against COVID. It's not worth those 4 little children being alone and without a mother and father. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkins. District 7, Commissioner Davis, and then after his report, I'll turn the meeting back over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Outlaw. Tourism Development Authority has not met since our budget meeting in May. I have had a couple more meetings with Capital Broadcasting on the project that they're working on down at the Village, which is a minor league baseball stadium that we have informed the board on a couple of times before. It has picked back up after COVID, and it is in conjunction with the city of Rocky Mount, and we're all moving forward. Capital doing a lot of plans and trying to refine the actual cost at this time. But at this point, I'd say it looks pretty favorable, and hopefully it will move forward. The Rocky Mount MPO will be meeting at 4:30 today. If we finish up here, I would be attending that meeting, but we hadn't met since we last had committee reports. Commissioner Outlaw.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Any questions for Commissioner Davis? Hearing none, back to you, sir.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Lamb, you have before I go into closed session?
No.
Okay, I entertain a motion to go into closed session at this time for the matter of attorney-client privilege and economic development. And I have one very short personnel item, just handing out some material to the board members.
So moved.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Belfield. Motion was made by Commissioner Outlaw. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in public hearing, a closed session, and I will pause just a minute to get the